ルーム303ラジオ Live from Tokyo.
Hello, happy Saturday. This is Leiya, and I'm back with this month's Fickle Human Radio. I hope everyone's doing good. It's really hot now in Tokyo. I think rainy season is done, and we are grinding our teeth waiting for the scary heat waves to hit, but we're staying cool internally. So the Fickle Human Radio is a series of audio dispatches by and for people who refuse to stay in one category. And in every conversation, I bring a guest who I believe embodies this sentiment. And today I'm with someone I've been admiring for the last couple of months. I'm with Hiroko Kikuchi. Hiroko-san.
Yay! Hello, everyone. Hiroko desu.
Thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure.
So, a brief overview of Hiroko. Hiroko Kikuchi is an interdisciplinary artist, born and currently based in Tokyo. We met last year at East.
That's right.
Yeah. At the Science Museum in Kudanshita.
そうだそうだ.
And I saw your piece. It was missing piece, pre-wanted piece, and the third one was
Wanted.
Wanted piece, yes.
Very confusing.
Yeah, I saw those three instructional art pieces, and I was stunned because it was the first time I had seen instructional art happening in Japan.
Whoa.
And I've been intrigued by instructional art and fluxus art and sort of like art as an intervention for some time, but I just wasn't really seeing that in the Japanese art scene, and so I was so just kind of like awestruck. And then we had a mutual connection, and you were also exhibiting at under sort of like the umbrella of a company that I used to work at. So there are all of these serendipities, and I'm so happy that I can have you here. But before we start, I always ask our guests to choose a song that represents them or what they do. And you chose
Imagine. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was telling you earlier, that was the hardest questions that I've had this year.
This year.
Yeah,
Oh my
seriously.
goodness.
Because it's almost one of those like, okay, having lived for a long time, there's so many songs
Yeah.
that it kind of shapes you who you are. But I think I chose this song because over the course of my artist era, this song continuously just pops up. I don't necessarily play it at home, but it's more as though like when I was on the street, I hear it. And when it's the Christmas season, you hear it. And the time like this, it means something else, Mm-hmm. I think for me, the song changes the meaning, depends on where you are and what era you were in. So I think, given the fact that there's so much going on in the world,
Yeah.
I thought this song might be a good one to sort of listen to.
I love it. Let's I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this song. Yeah, I'm also in the same boat. It's one of those, I think John Lennon in general, he's become sort of like a part of the human fabric, so to speak.
Right.
That even if you're not a fan or a regular listener, it's embedded in your consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's like a symbol almost.
Right. I mean, there might be, I think some of the listeners might not know what this song is. They might have heard it.
Yeah.
They might not know who John Lennon is and Yoko Ono is.
Yeah.
That happens a lot, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm not even kidding. Like, I don't want to go on a tangent from the beginning. But I'm just going to say, like, okay, I know sometimes I tell people, like, who inspires you? Yoko Ono? Who?
Oh my goodness.
I'm not even kidding.
Wow.
So,
I mean, I guess a lot of people don't know with Yoko Ono specifically that she has an entire life and an entire archive of her own work, and she had a very strong practice.
Right.
But I think when I talk about Yoko Ono to people associate her with John Lennon so much, but I almost knew her as Yoko Ono separately, and then I realized, oh, she happens to be, you know, a very iconic, partnered with a very iconic person.
Right,
but,
you're one of the rare.
Yeah. I think it's the other way around. We're like,
happens
oh,
quite a lot.
Isn't she John Lennon's partner?
Yeah, right.
And they don't realize how iconic of an artist and thinker she was.
Exactly. So I don't, you know, I know we're not necessarily talking about her work per se, but I think, you know, through, you know, one of my inspiration does come her sort of form of artwork, which you mentioned, instructional work.
Yeah.
So I think I think she is very responsible for the type of art that I do. And then that's how I met you.
Yeah.
Through East too.
Yeah.
So I think, the song really kind of came to be to share that today. And, you know, we can just talk about the song, you know what I mean? Like, but I think just kind of like the song that I think I want people to know, to really read into it. And then when, again, timing like this, you know, what's happening, you know, on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
You have to imagine it, you know?
I love it. Well, let me play the track, and then we'll be back with the conversation with Hiroko. Here's Imagine by John Lennon.
Imagine there's no heaven. See as if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, or brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world
felt like a good slowing down. We're in the middle of Shinjuku right now.
That's right.
But I think that recalibrated
Good.
the energy.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, just sort of like, what makes you feel when you listen to this song for you?
It reminds me a bit of when I was younger and how much more willing I was to listen to other people, because when you're young and you're a child, you're aware that you don't know, and yes, there are moments where kids try to pretend like they know, but there's no shame in not knowing.
Right.
And there's no shame in wondering, who is this person? Why don't I understand them? Like that's part of the experience of being a child. And I think this song sort of like asks very simple questions about humanity and other people. And but they're questions that as adults we stop asking because you don't want to come off as being naive, maybe.
Right.
But yeah, when I listen to this song, and I think a lot of like older like folk songs that sing about peace and pain and suffering, the lyrics are so simple, but they ask questions that we cannot stop asking, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. I like that.
I feel interviewed.
That's right.
But thank you for an amazing song selection. So let's start with, I know a little bit about your background and your journey to becoming an artist, but let's start from there. So you got your bachelor's at Boston University, right?
Right.
So you moved from Japan to the U.S. to pursue your undergrad?
Right. So first, that was kind of the plan, right? But then one thing led to the other. I ended up living there for almost like 23 years. So it's almost as though like, I mean, it's a good segue to sort of talking about sort of my lack of ability to be able to have a plan in my life. But in the other way that I think, just like what you said in the songs, like I tend to listen to others quite a lot. And then not everybody, but I think throughout my life, there are so many people who just kind of like kindly say, hey, you are good at this. You are good at that. More like a positive reinforcement, which I never really got when I was here in Japan growing up. So I guess it's not to say like I never got it. That might be an overstatement. But the sense that I got of, to be encouraged to the decision that I'm making, or intuitive ones, even the small ones that people recognize. I think that mattered to me. Yeah. And then I think the threads of all the serendipities and then sort of very much of a small intuitive decisions be validated. And I guess that's how I ended up living there for such a long time. But I think when I got there, not like a lot of folks who are, have a big, grand goals and hopes and reasons to study abroad or be somewhere else. I wasn't like that. I was more like, not having a good memories growing up. And I happened to have family members who backed me up. And then also like, people who just supported it in the sort of putting me in a journey where, nobody knows what's going to happen,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's sort of like, I ended up going to the college, but I was always sort of in my mindset that who knows what's going to happen next. So never really kind of go there to study something. More like being there as a life, just really kind of exploring what life would take me to.
Okay. So it wasn't, and you got a BFA. Was it what was the BFA in fine arts?
Yeah, BFA in fine arts, and then I ended up going to graduate school at the Tufts University.
Tufts.
But that's when I study more of a conceptual based art, which is like idea matters. Up to then, I was just making objects and then understanding human anatomy and sorts of things, right? Very classical, traditional training behind it. But then when I went to graduate school, that's when, again, some folks whom I met, including the really amazing professors, that I said, hey, do you know Yoko Ono? In the feminism class, right?
This would have been, you were in school in, would it be the 90s?
90s,
Right?
right? 90s, late 90s.
Okay.
Right. So it's almost like, I don't know if you're born yet, but
I was born in the mid 90s,
90s,
95.
so you were there somewhere,
yes,
right?
I was existing.
Yeah, but it's almost like it was a time when, I don't know. I don't like to compare with others, but I think, I was the only Asian woman who was studying contemporary art practice at the school, and then also doing the performance art, and then also, really pursuing avant-garde art movement.
Okay.
It's just all those like very much a politically driven, and art becomes a catalyst to change the world type of work.
Yeah.
And then I was very much inspired by that because, being one of the minority folks in, even in the college situations, it makes you realize who you are, And then I happen to have really good, again, encartments throughout my life who would put me out of school. Hey, do you want to work in Chinatown and just really understand Asian American culture? And I'm like, sure. And then that's where I learned about culture matters, right? But also not, if you don't talk about it, it fades out. So I think speaking up about who you are, even as an identity to cultural heritage and so forth, I learned early on, you have to speak about it. Otherwise, whoever is in the mainstream would just rewrite your history. I think those experiences really kind of stayed with me for, up to now, where I really see what's invisible.
What you said just now about being the only Asian woman in a lot of these spaces, becoming a minority, so to speak. How was that experience, given the fact that you were born and raised in Japan and you're sort of part of the majority,
right?
And then you're transitioning into a space where you're not only a minority from a numbers perspective, but then I almost can imagine you were confronted by this idea of like race and hierarchy existing within race, which when I speak to people who are kind of like ethnically fully Japanese and have had similar experiences of moving abroad and being confronted with racism and racial hierarchy and suddenly being seen as the other, a lot of people say that they did not realize their race within a global context until they left and they experienced sort of the other side, so to speak. And it made them see being Japanese very differently when they came back. I'm curious if there were, what that experience was for you in those 20 years, like the 90s to the 2000s was such a transformative time.
Right. I think it's just sort of like in a personal level, I think I was validated that being different is okay.
Oh.
That was kind of like,
okay.
Maybe very, very different experience
Yeah.
from a lot of folks that who feel that way.
So it was a positive.
It was very
almost.
positive. It was one of those, it's okay to be a woman. It's okay to be tall. That kind of, in my mind, I'm very simple in the very sort of core of myself. And then I question a lot, right? And there's so many things I just don't know why the world is the way it is. And then you might kind of call it very curious, but I think it's a little bit beyond that. I think there are so many elements in the world that you just can't comprehend, in your generation, in your own body, even with others, or in the context of, learning. I think there's a sort of microcosmo of what you don't understand can be validated in some degrees. That's the time maybe US is different now, but back then there's a little bit of residue of that when I was there. And maybe the people whom I was surrounded by were, giving me that kind of values. And then, so I don't really know, the contextual way, or even it is about the time. It is about whom I surrounded, myself with. But the sentiment that I got was very positive. And then, so I guess, yeah, that's just, definitely for like really great to be able to sort of see the identity matters,
Right.
But that's definitely intellectual connotations for me. But more of a sentimental one is just what I just said. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. No, I think it's I'm definitely outing myself in a sense by asking. When I ask that question, I think I often think of experiences of encountering difference or being seen as different as something to problematize, so to speak. But I think hearing what you said, that I just realized, that was a similar experience I had when I moved to the US for my undergrad, or when I spent time in England. The positivity and the validation of difference came before the questioning of like the politics of how institutionalized like privileges. That kind of came after. I think initially it was like, wow, this is nice. And then you start to see
why it is nice.
It's like, okay, there's a lot of other things going on within this like idea of like diversity. But so you got your BFA, and then you were studying more of like contemporary and conceptual art in your graduate's degree. What was art always in the back of your mind from like before you went to the US, of you becoming, an artist, so to speak, or was this sort of an organic something you like you were pulled to?
Right, the latter, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I've never grew up more in a way the cultured, environment growing up. Like, I don't remember going to the museum with my family per se. They might have taken me there, but they fit me well. The culinary.
Yes.
I was very global growing up. But I think it's just sort of visual arts and so forth, right? It was something that I was introduced to when I was there. Like, while sort of exploring my identity and also experimenting. A lot of things that unless I do it, I wouldn't know kind of work. So, like work in a community and so forth, right? And throughout the time, I always questions why I'm sort of drawn to this. Why am I interested in this?
Yeah.
And I study to contextualize it. That's kind of how I learn.
Okay.
So, but also like, people will always feed me like, hey, you need to read this. Sometimes reading helped me, but also being on the ground, experimenting art with youth, realizes art is something for privilege, but art can't be otherwise as well. So there's a lot of like experimental pursuit that comes along for me to really understand art, or at least it's like want to sort of continue to be an artist. So I think it came later in my life, I think.
Okay.
Never really was kind of one of those young people, I want to be an artist.
I wanna be an artist, yeah.
Right. I was never like that. I wasn't a veterinarian or the type, nobody says that word anymore, but stewardess, that's flight attendants.
Okay.
I think, that's partially because my mom used to do the folk songs and stuff. So I used to listen to a lot of English-based musics, including Beatles and so forth. So I think that has a lot to do with sort of wanting to sort of pursue, or at least it's like they give me options whether I want to study here or there or somewhere else, or not pursue school. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up.
And right now, so far in the conversation, we've used the word art so many times,
right.
It's a surprisingly tricky thing, I think, to define. But what is art to you? And I'm curious, like, if that definition has shifted at all over the course of the last, 2 decades of learning, practicing, experimenting with art.
Right. So I guess kind of like what comes to my mind, right? It's like art is a lens, art is a mirror, and art is lived experience. So it's never sort of, I mean, there are many ways to sort of answer it, I think. But I think what pushed me to make art has really moved from a sort of a much more kind of urgent or visceral place to, I think, like art was or maybe still is a salvation for me personally, to sometimes the anthem, like, really kind of tap my, shoulders, hey, you don't have to be the same with others.
Yeah.
You do what you do. To sometimes like inescapable curse for me. Like, I can't do anything else at this point. It's like, okay, come back. Okay, this is what you need to sort of focus on.
Yeah.
So I think, and also like it's a beacon of hope, right? Just like the song that we listened to. Partially because there's just no answers to it, what art consists to. And then I think it changes over time. It changes by person. That's how fluid that term for me is. So it could be a painting that you're looking at, the song. It really doesn't matter. But that's kind of like, I go back and forth. But I think most recent kind of interpretations or sort of how I define art is more like a practical poetics in some way. So like, throughout my career, I do a lot of practical work just to kind of solve the social issues and cultural issues and so forth, right? But also like, my urge to sort of do things that I don't want to explain to others, but I do want to sort of express. It's not like abstract in some way, but I think sometimes like the sort of the form of expression, sometimes in the form of collage, is replacing the sort of the text.
That's so, when you use the word like practical, and it's interesting you use the word like practical and poetics, it almost feels like antagonistic in a sense, right? Because when you think about contemporary, like modern society and how we differentiate practical as being logical,
Right.
and then poetics as being this like ephemeral sort of thing. But it's interesting that you bring that together. It's like a practical poetics. And then that also being a tool to like explain the inexplainable. That's so, it almost is like counterintuitive almost. But there's something that's...
but it kind of makes sense,
it
right?
makes sense, yeah.
Right, like you as a writer too. So sometimes the notion is right there, but your urge to explain it or your urge to be practical about it. But as an artist, poetry is there, and oftentimes it's dismissed of the ability or incompetence of it. And then, so I don't like art to be the decoration in some way, right? I mean, sometimes it's great to have a beautiful work that your eyes ought to be able to see. But then sometimes like when you close your eyes, it's all in here, and then there's a poetry there. And then, but that can also lead to something extremely practical. And then, so I think I don't have the sort of a definite definitions, but sometimes, when I think about the term for myself, like, I'm trying to sort of shift the concept, the mode of time, posing is okay. So posing 1 minute to say, why am I saying this? And then say it matters, right? But oftentimes you're automatically, what do you call it? Like you automate it to say it out of practice. Or when you're talking in words, you feel like you have to use the words to express it. Right. It doesn't mean that you have to sort of mix up all those different kinds of medium to speak, but it is saying it's that pausing, understanding time, waiting, sometimes like misinterpreting others is a beautiful moment to understand human being in some way.
Oh, this is amazing. Because I was just, as you were speaking, I was thinking about how there's that phrase, you know, when people say like the art of something, like the art of play,
right,
or the art of driving,
right,
or the art of baking. And that's very different from baking.
Exactly.
Right? When someone says, how do you bake versus what is the art of baking?
Right.
And
that's a good one.
And the art of, I don't know, I'm thinking about art of baking right now, but you have baking as the process with the ingredients and the recipe. But then when you start to think about the art of baking, it elicits certain questions of why does one bake? What does it mean to wait in front of an oven for 2 hours? What are the emotional experience? Like, it allows, I wonder if one way to think of art is it's sort of the permission to ask questions about the things we've deemed as normal or fixed. And art allows us to put a question mark in front of all of the, like, you replace all the periods with a question mark. Everything.
That's a good way to put it, though. I think it's kind of like that.
Someone says, this is red, and it becomes, this is red? Really? But I think this is a good transition, though, into, like, you said you were drawn to, like, avant-garde and conceptual and fluxus, and maybe some people aren't familiar with these terms, but maybe we can not explain it, but share it with people through the perspective of, like, why you were drawn to these things, and what that looks like from the lens of what you do actually right now as an artist.
Sure. I guess it's like, you know, I don't want to sort of go deeply into the sort of definitions of terminology and what entails it, but the way that I see it is just like, for example, you know, fluxus, you know, that means to flow. It's just very fluid way of understanding the word, right? That's kind of like the terminology contains it. But I'd say the fluxus taught me that everyday action is enough to matter. I think that's kind of one of those things, like, you know, you don't need a permission to make meanings. So it's almost like, you know, it's kind of like, speaking of like baking, right? What I'm inspired by Fluxus instruction work is almost like a recipe. You know, you write your recipe, right? You know what it would taste like, and you try to embody that. But then as soon as it kind of deconstructed into the text-based instruction, it opens up a lot of possibilities. You know, I might want to add a little bit of more salt. Even when it says a spoon of salt, right? And then I like it to be baked a little bit longer. But that sort of connotations or colloquialism that are built around the whole instruction / recipe / you know, musical score, you know, whatever you want to name it. I like that. It's almost like as though you have to have people to be integral part of it. Somebody else is to be integral part of the execution of it. And every single one is different. That kind of like the process and technology, how you define art, really inspire me. And then, so I don't know. So that's kind of like, I feel like in avant-garde art, you know, in the sort of 60s and 70s, there's so much going on, right? Everybody was trying to figure something out. And then everybody threw out so many different ways to solve something with the quotation. But I think the chaos that I feel from the time, but also it kind of points to something extremely meaningful as a human being is there. And then I really like that sort of kind of a mode that I carries through, that I probably in my generations or even at any future generations, this kind of reinforcement is not going to help us to solve anything, right? But I think the mindset that we can carry through by building on, you know, your generation and that generation's accumulated over something that is so important in life, you know? So I guess I like that sort of how that kind of maneuver to something, and also how that grows into something that I can no longer, you know, reach to. The whole process in itself, for me, is a sort of what inspired me to make art too, also do things collectively. Yeah, it's sort of like it's so kind of all in. Maybe the listeners are just like, huh? But I'm just using my hands as well to describe it.
Luckily, they can see this.
Yeah, that's
too,
right. That's
so-
right.
Yeah. Oh.
What do I don't know. It's just sort of like I think here in Japan, a lot of times when you say avant-garde, often people sort of in fashion kind of know.
Avant-garde.
Avant-garde.
Yeah.
So if I say Zen gauges, everybody's like, oh no, thank you. So it's just that language itself is so built in a contextual, cultural, aspect of it. So I guess, I don't know, I went that with my sort of, contribution to this conversation about avant-garde. And we can sort of talk a lot about it, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Okay, I want to start to get into sort of what you're doing now in Tokyo. So you came back to Japan how many years ago?
It's almost 12.
You came
a
back
little
to
bit more.
12 years
like,
ago?
Like I came back. I started to come back on the year of 2011 when the Tohoku Great Earthquake happened. That was the reason why I started to come back. So then I go back and forth a little bit, but to kind of maybe it's like 12, 13, 14 years. Wow, time has flown by. Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about what art means to you, what that practice looks like, but in recent years, what are some of the maybe more representative practices, works that you've been doing lately?
Well, I guess the 3 instructional work that you experienced, that was sort of like, I have like a decade worth of work that I think has more to do with sort of community building, community engagement type of stuff. It's embedded in the instructional work as well, but it's more like a practical, a social practice type of work.
Okay,
where,
so that's like involving like larger communities,
right,
trying to intervene in some sort of social issue.
Right. And then a few years ago, I had a mental breakdown. So it was kind of like I don't want to sort of get into too much of it, but I think that's when I realized it's like, what am I doing? I spend way too much time relearning, coming back, and then try to sort of simulate myself into this Japanese culture that I've
because
never.
you were away for
I was away for so long,
and so much probably changed since
exactly.
you left.
Change is one thing. Also, unchanged is something else.
Yeah.
So I was just like being a sort of very kind of intellectually motivated young woman. Well, not so young when I came back, but I'm just sort of like a woman who, is like ready to, continue being an artist, try to sort of have some contributor to the shift of society, right? And what I faced was something very different. This kind of like, what's the word for it? What was the word for it? Let me just kind of take a look at the cheating note. Compartmentalization.
Oh, compartmentalization. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, that's a long word, right?
Yeah.
But what that means is like, sometimes like it's all kind of have a walls between disciplines and categories and ages and genders.
Yeah.
It's so, everything's compartmentalized.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of like bred it or so, educated to really cut across it.
Oh my God. Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's almost
Yeah.
like, when I said I'm an artist, oh, what do you make? Which is like the sort of like, always very much of a question, right? What I make is something else. And that just is one thing that I'm so used to answering. But then I think the hardest part for me was kind of a social sculptural kind of way of understanding what artist does. Is that, we can be integral part of creating social infrastructure. our ideas and our contribution matters. And then there are many sort of examples that I carry with. But then when I came back, it's like, oh, that's because you were in the United States.
There's no space
for that sort of stuff here. Oh, you're a little bit too old. Maybe you should teach that. And then, so I'm just like, okay. I think in the way that in reflect, I'm just like, it didn't hit me so hard when I started to sort of understand a little bit more of a cultural constraints here intellectually and all the sort of the words that are kind of bombarded me. But then in reflecting after some years, right, I was just like, it definitely ate me up in some degrees. And it took my heart out.
Yeah.
And then there's a moments of disappointment and also lack of hope. As much as I'm very much a hopeful person, I was just like, okay, what am I doing, right? And then I guess my sort of, not regret, but I think the way that I see the last 10 years or so is that I was being a sort of a good pleaser to what societies wanted. So I was just like, also like I was doing what I was good at. But then it realized it's like, okay, what am I even doing, right? It's like, I am here for a reason. And then I put all the sort of experience that I was, on the side, tried to be swayed to fit into the mold. And then that's kind of like really hit me. And then I decided to make different kinds of decisions to do this and do that. And one of which was that sort of instructional work, which is very much a core of how I express myself. Like I spend a lot of time really choosing the word. I never really want to be sort of about state making, but I want people to sort of feel something, but also be personalized inward and outward, and then have something to say. And then I think in Japan especially, they need some type of reason to talk about yourself, right? Yeah. So I want this type of work to be the reason for people to be able to say, hey, you know what? It sucked to be a mom sometimes, although it's one of the best jobs to have. That kind of confession to like, oh, I never looked at the world this way. I want to know more about it. I kind of like that kind of conversation. Yeah. That's also lived experience, right? And then I urge for that. And then that inspired me back and continue to be an artist. So some way, all the three works that you said, you really, happy to see, really kind of got me, really appreciate you saying that. Because sometimes like, being here, when you're sort of career artist, you don't get praised that much.
Oh, yes.
Well, thank you, great work. I mean, that's American thing, right? In some way, good job, you look nice kind of stuff. But when I'm here, nobody say thank you, or I like what you contribute to the world in the way that it resonate my heart. And so, so it's almost like that type of work is something I'm happy to be able to continue doing. Meanwhile, I think all the work that I've done so much throughout my life with youth is something that I'm doing with the collective called TRA. And then that's something that it's not my personal sort of execution. It's more like it's only thing that collectively can sort of, make it realize. So yeah, it's almost like right now I'm myself, as a sort of self-expressioner. and then also like there are some people who made an analogy say my work is like a karupisu no geniki. Right, so you focus on that way we're gonna be able to sort of figure out how to dilute that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's almost like
you're like the syrup.
Right, it's like a syrup, right? So it's like I'm just really trying to make the sort of the deepest, darkest, thickest syrup that I can make. And then through trial, with youth, with the audience and participants, if you can sort of figure out how, flavors and how to dilute it and then make it drinkable to make, colorful.
Yeah.
I think I want my art to be that way, and that's what I'm trying to do. And then meanwhile, I think there are a few people that are really supporting me to be able to do that more in public. And then through Tra, it's more like, analogy is the same, but I think, I'm at that sort of, time of my life where, I really want the more of a newer generations to really have more of a sort of opportunities and then learning, and there are places to be able to sort of manifest their ideas or even experiment a lot, right? The failure is part of being young, right? So I really want to embrace that. So I'm just trying to sort of make sure that through my sort of very much my own practice and also collective practice, I want to continue to make rooms for others to learn or others to sort of manifest their own sort of blossom and stuff.
You've like answered all of my last few questions in that wonderful response of like I think so far, and it's so crazy that like time when I'm talking to you goes so quickly. We have like 9 minutes, which is insane.
Really?
It felt like 20 minutes, but it's been 50 minutes, which is crazy. This is the beauty of speaking with you, though, is you just open so many doors of thought. But I think, one of the things that I personally really appreciate isn't the right word, but was sort of like English. English is sometimes hard. I'm going to use the word appreciate. The thing I appreciate about your just existing and the things you do, be it with some of the youth projects where younger people become sort of like advisors, right, to questions that grown-ups have, some of the projects you do on a more infrastructural level, working with local communities, and then more of the sort of instructional pieces that that I experience.
Thanks for saying that, all of that. That's exactly
because I want people to know. I think all of those things with what you said, you are an example of a way of being that is not as visible, I think, in Japan specifically. That, despite the challenges you highlighted, it is possible to practice this sort of art and to build this sort of career. But I wanted sort of like, if you have any, I don't really like this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And if you hate it, you can tell me. But if you have any like words of advice or encouragement to maybe other artists, practitioners that are maybe interested in doing the sort of things that you're doing, or they're trying in their own ways but are coming up against institutional gatekeeping and like all of these challenges, like if you have any final words of
the wisdom,
love and wisdom, yeah, because you got a lot of wisdom.
I'm just teasing you. No, I know. Thanks for asking me that, because I think, it's hard to live, right? Period,
yeah.
Right? And then especially live as an artist, period. But I think if you're interested in sort of continue to call yourself as an artist, I think you have to, there's a lot of hurdles and there are a lot of obstacles that come in your way, but you can sort of break through it, with your energy. So that's kind of one thing that I want people to believe in. Also, like, for my own sort of my word, I think, is that I think don't wait for the box to be handed to you. Does that make sense to you? It's almost as though, like, if you don't have where you feel comfortable, where you want to sort of stand on as a platform, create it on your own. That's what artists do.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's a sort of conventional way of becoming an artist for sure. And then there are ways to pursue that as well, which I don't know quite well yet, or never really was interested in that some degree. But then I think if you want to sort of live, and then as an artist, as your own sort of, more like way of living, I think you just have to sort of do that. Otherwise, you always kind of, come across all those like reasons not to continue to be an artist. There's so many people that I've, so many of my friends who who said I used to be an artist, which really pains me.
It is.
It's like artist is not like a driver's license. You don't have a license to be an artist. So it's all in you. If you want to be an artist, you're an artist. And if you want to live as it, you have to sort of say to the public that you're an artist. So I guess, I don't know if did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it's choosing. I wonder if it's what it is like choosing, for one, to believe that you are what you want to be.
Right.
And to trust that there's a vitality to that, and that energy will carry you through. But there's also a responsibility that we have to take over that decision.
Right.
And to not wait for the box or the platform to be handed to you. And I think that's a great place to like kind of end the conversation. But I'm glad we landed there, because that's part of what I hope people discover through these conversations I've been having on the radio, is that there is no singular way of being a person, which we all know. But that also means there's no singular way to build one's practice.
Yeah, I guess especially now, right? There's so much layers of informations that exist. It's very confusing. And then it's very easy to be swayed to something, to be validated by whom, right? But then, just like you said, it's everything is on you. And then especially now, if you want to be something, I feel like you can actually get that. And then there is a sort of infrastructure there, I feel like. So I would definitely sort of cheer them. Just claim yourself. And then
Claim yourself.
Right. And otherwise you become totally invisible in this kind of day and age, I think.
Thank you so much. I think claiming yourself, that's a beautiful way to put it. And thank you so much, Hiroko. I wish we had another 2 hours, because there were all of these other things that I wanted to ask about. But I think we'll just have to do a part 2 one day. Thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure for having me. And thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I hope you feel encouraged to claim the life that you want for yourself and the visions that you have for yourself. And I'll be back again next month with a bit of a different show. So stay tuned for more information. And one last thing, I am writing reflection reports of past episodes, and I'm putting that up on my Substack. So if you're intrigued, please check out the Substack articles as well for past archives. Thank you so much. That was the Fickle Human Radio. I'm Leiya. Our guest was Hiroko, and have a great rest of your Saturday. Bye.
Bye.